And welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Plek, and joining me in studio is none other than the Motas.
Hello.
They have Ezekiel and one on the way over there. What do you do, Bree?
Like end of July.
End of July. And I also have Pastor Holland Gregg from the East Side Community Church.
Hello.
Pastor Holland, welcome. And then I also have Jordan Smith.
Excited to be here.
Forensics expert.
Just keeping that going.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, listen, I think it's true, and I believe in your forensic skills. All right. So we are talking about Song of Solomon chapter 4. And Holland, I think you preached this back in the day at Eastside in the 2020s.
Back in the day, indeed.
And this is where we talked about sex. And so if you've got young ones around, we're going to talk about sex. So you might, this is where, get them away from your screen or put your headphones on as you watch. So listen, we've been talking about God's design for sex. And one of the things that we made note of is that God's word has everything we need for life, godliness, salvation, and sanctification for having sex and also for parenting. I throw parenting in there because I think sometimes parents are like, where's the part of how to be a good dad or how to be a good mom? The Proverbs is a great place to start for that. Song of Solomon is great to work on your marriage. Proverbs is great to work on your parenting. And so I bring that up because we're getting into the scripture, and it is very graphic of Solomon's description of his bride, where he goes over her eyes, her hair, her teeth, her lips, her cheeks, her neck, and then to her breasts, and he is enjoying every aspect of his wife. And what I said there is that the groom initiated affection due to his bride, which I got from 1 Corinthians 7:3, where it says, let the husband rend to his wife the affection due her, or as ESV says, the husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, which I thought was sort of funny, because conjugal rights seem a little bit not quite as intimate, or maybe just seem a little rougher than affection. I was just like, that's sort of odd. Anyway, the reason why I bring that up is Jesus loves the church, and husbands and wives are to represent the picture of Jesus and his church. So when you're wondering who is supposed to render the affection first, it is the husband's duty, job, obligation, role, and responsibility to render or to give his wife the affection that is due to her. Have you guys seen that be something that men push back on in your premarital, marital counseling that you guys have seen?
Yes. A lot.
Yeah. All right,
Definitely.
so, and how have you seen that? Like, what do you mean by that? 'Cause you've had a lot of couples come through some re-engage where they're really talking about the intimate stuff of their life, and it seems like the men go passive here, and the women are the ones that are really rendering the affection due.
Well, yeah, the men are all like, oh, our sex life is great. No complaints. And then when we split off men and women, it's all complaints from the women.
No, and I don't want you to get in any specific person, but generally, what are some of the complaints that you've heard?
That she's ready for bed and he's just feeling up on her, expecting something. There's no
preheating the oven?
There's no preheating the oven. There's no sweet talking. It's just straight to the point, and then the woman will feel either obligated or pressured, or the men feel rejected.
Right. And that's essentially, I think that what you have described is how most of the marriages I've coached initially start off, is that the man does not think about sex until he's in the bedroom, because men are like waffles, women are like spaghetti. And so women are sort of thinking, oh, if he wanted it, he would be talking about it all day. And men are like, if it's not in front of me, I don't see it. And I think that's part of the problem, especially into marriage, because you've forgotten the art of the romance because something happened. What do you think, Holland?
Yeah. It sounds good. I agree.
Yeah.
The art of, did you say the art of the romance?
The art of the romance.
The art of the romance, yeah.
Yeah.
The groom in Song of Solomon a master of the art of the romance.
Yeah, he is the master of the art.
Masterful with his words, masterful with showing affection, communicating desire, communicating expectations. Yeah, puts a lot of men to shame. But is meant to be a model.
Couple things I saw here is that, and this might be helpful. I think if you understood the wedding day and why that was probably felt like a microwave moment, is because the woman has been preparing for the wedding day. It's been an agreed upon day. She knows it's coming. The day of, she's fully engaged, thinking about all that. Her dress she's wearing it for the way that's going to eventually come off. I mean, like, there's all of that goes into it. And the guy, he just shows up and he's happy to be there and doesn't understand the amount of preparation and work that's gone into this day. So then afterwards, whenever couples are married, the man does not realize the work that goes into getting the woman prepared for sex. And so he shows up just like he did on the wedding day, not knowing there's a lot of other factors that help the woman get preheated. And I feel like that's the problem. And so also, we need to have husbands and wives kind of think, remember, they're just like Jesus in the church. And so we love, the church loves Jesus because he first loved us. And so men, knowing that example of initiating affection and initiating all that, just like the husband is seen here, that becomes imperative upon us as men to start with the calendar. Because the calendar, I think, and speak to this, Bree, if this would be a help to kind of parse this out. Is the calendar helpful in getting a woman ready to get preheated for sex? Is that helpful for you to know when that date is coming?
For me, no. I think just looking at my calendar and seeing sex on there is really weird.
No, but if he... Yes, you don't write sex on the calendar. What you do write is, hey, we're going to this restaurant, or we're going and spending...
planning date night?
Yes.
Then yes. But I also think the calendar is very literal. If when you come home from work, you want something, like you said, make a little comment before you leave. Text something nice throughout the day. Don't text, can we have sex tonight?
Right.
Be more romantic, more words. Because
talk to me about the more words, because I think men don't understand more words, because in general we think words are just a means to a straight ends of communication, and for a woman it's a lot more. It says so much more than just I want sex now.
Yeah, I can't
say something real quick. Well, I thought of this earlier, but when you were talking about the wedding night, and it seemed easy from the guy's perspective. If you think about it, the wedding day is probably one of the days where the man is the most romantic in a relationship. You write your vows, you dance, you look into each other's eyes. So to the woman's side, it's everything she wants, Right. But then the next day, we're not doing the same thing. You know what I mean? We don't continue.
There's no first dance. There's no giving, feeding each other cake. There's no
Speak
vows.
for yourselves.
Yeah.
We feed each other cake daily in my house.
Yeah, that's good. But imagine if you had a systemized
Sound like a word.
A system.
A system, thank you. A system where you understood there were certain expectations that went along with, because a groom didn't make up the whole wedding. He's we should probably have a first dance. That was it's more hey, what song are we gonna do for our first dance? You're not asking what, you're asking how. Whereas I think for the rest of your lives, you're I don't know, what do you want to do? And that, I think, becomes the problem for relationships, because it feels like to the woman, she's wanting spontaneous love and joy that looks like it's coming from the heart. And he's just just give me the plan and I will work the plan. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Going back to the words thing, though, I can't speak for every woman because every woman's different. But for me, when I feel appreciated, or I feel like he sees me, or I just hear compliments, that automatically makes me even if he's simply doing it to truly appreciate me and has no intention of sex, I'm more likely to initiate because I feel connected. I feel like, oh, he sees me, he values me. When you walk past your wife in the kitchen and smack her butt, and that's your way of indicating you want something, I will never pick up on that. I think you're just being a dude. And
Let me write this down.
because I feel like
You
say
just
like,
shattered
oh, let
many
her
universes
know.
with
Or
that statement right there.
Yeah.
You just destroyed a lot of men.
I feel like if you're like, oh, preheat the oven, let her know, give her hints. A lot of men, those will be their hints. That's not the hints that us women
So what is
want.
the hint that you want?
Words.
Words.
Got it. Okay, so as he gently taps your bottom as he passes you, like you need him to say, what what does he say? Fill in the blank. Help him out.
I don't know. I can't like give you an exact. But to me, if it's just a constant touching of boobs and butt, I think you're simply a dude. I don't think
Bro, just laying it out.
I'm being real.
Yeah. All right. No, I appreciate that. We are real here at the Pastor Plex podcast.
To me, that's not being romantic. That's not uplifting your wife. Like that's not.
So what you're thinking is just coming up and just. So one of the things I talked about is that 7-second kisses, because that is one of the ways that you can induce saliva transfer, and saliva transfer over time builds up testosterone in the woman, which makes her arousal to be way easier. So would you be excited about 7-second kisses from your husband?
Yeah, and we've done that before.
Oh, awesome.
Someone told us a long time ago that the best thing they did for their marriage was make out every night.
Yeah.
With no expectations of anything else. Just
Right.
make out every night. And that alone
It's exactly right.
resulted in a better sex life for them.
Yeah. All right. So kissing, without expectation of sex, even though, how can I put this? Of course, the man has such pure intention just to love her in the moment, but there is probably a hope that this will lead to something more. All right. So let's talk about that. Is it okay to have non-sexual touching with the hope that sexual touching will come later?
Yeah, but I think that can't be your only. I don't want to like put you on the spot.
No,
But
it's too late.
a big thing that we worked through is he thought him walking past and touching or walking past and giving me a kiss was initiating or letting me know. But when you do that every single day, I don't know that. I think
Right.
that's just who you are and what you do. So I think if yeah, I don't know. Like you need to make it
I think she might be a words of affirmation girl.
maybe. I don't know.
Like, okay.
To me there's nothing special in that. If
Oh, wow.
there are days where he's rejected
So
me, but he was still being physically
Well, he was with words rejecting you, but being with his hands very accepting.
correct. But then still didn't like that wasn't a day that he wanted to have sex. So I'm like, how am I supposed to differentiate when you're giving me hints and when you're just
So would it be fair to
Being
say,
you.
Pablo, you're always giving hints? There's never a time that's not hoping for something more?
That's exactly right.
Okay, so
It's pretty universally true.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. I think what men are trying to do is always preheat, and so I think this might be where it might be helpful to help your husband out by saying, if you're wanting sex, that's not getting you that. But then of course, I feel like the spontaneity is a big thing for women to feel like it's not for another purpose. It's for like the genuine just wanting to be with you.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really difficult to pull off. But I do appreciate that you shared that.
I think we give, I think you've talked about this. We give what we want.
Right.
So Bree is a lot better at giving me compliments and telling me how good I look. And like, I could literally care less. I actually don't like it when she does it.
Okay. But
And
that's a hint to you.
yeah, sure. And
You
then
don't like it when your wife tells you that she's attracted to you.
no, oh, I mean,
Jeez.
yeah.
he doesn't.
But
Why?
But in her words, it's like, oh, you look good today. I'm just like, okay, well, like, what do you
It's like,
say
of
then?
course. I mean,
What do you say then?
You didn't. I mean, what am I? A piece of meat? I mean, like, what?
Right? Like, I feel used.
Oh my.
No. But then for me, what I would want from her is for her to just come up and touch me. And so naturally,
Yeah.
that's what I do to her.
Oh, right.
But she doesn't really want that. She wants me to give her compliments.
Right.
There you go.
And so
So it seems like the pattern that Solomon's laying out here is lots of words. He's got I think as Pastor Mo said, an arsenal of words at his disposal.
arsenal of compliments.
And an arsenal of compliments. And he is just boom, 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 boom. And he's talking about everything that you can possibly see, which I think speaks to how a man is. He sometimes men speak about, like, they're in their box of their wife right now, and so he's just going off everything he can possibly see, and he just lists it off, which is actually a great technique. He's not sitting there going to go like, and I cannot wait to spend the next 15 years with you thinking about strolling through the park of our one-day happiness. He's talking about right now, I'm really into you. I see you. You're beautiful to me. I'm excited about you. And that's what preheats her to a point where she feels seen. Is that true?
Yeah.
I think for me, the
Okay.
reason why knowing he wants me to truly connect
Yeah.
is important because of a porn addiction as well. Because
Okay.
I don't know when it's, oh, you just need your fix so you don't go to something else. And when it's truly like, I want to be intimate and connect on a deeper level with you.
Okay.
And I think if a guy initiates the same way every single time, then the women feel like they're being used for the same thing, or the reason for the sex is the same thing every single time.
Okay, but let's talk about that, because I did talk about sex, specifically orgasm and all that means. In the last verse says, God says, eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love. God is pleased by sex and joy within his design. I talked about how there's hugging neuropeptide, a jealous neuropeptide, the dopamine reward neurotransmitter that all explodes in the brain as you have sex. And what dopamine does, it creates desire, pleasure, desire to do it again. Oxytocin is a bonding, like it feel like this is my person, I'm one with you. And vasopressin that's released is it's a mate guarding neuropeptide, which makes this is my person that I'm supposed to be guarding and jealous of, and I want her to be mine. Okay. What we talked about is that
So cool.
it is wild how God wired the brain. It's so cool. So, what I said, what wires together, fires together. And what we talked about is how the brain has a neuroplasticity that allows it to conform to desire and enjoy monogamous relationship with your spouse. Okay. However, what porn does is it messes up the neural pathways and creates new neural pathways, and you bond to pixels instead of a person. And that's a problem. And so what we said was that you could, and the problem with when you don't have oxytocin and vasopressin bonding you to your spouse, you then need a harder and harder and harder pornography so that you can have the dopamine reward happen. And so what we said was, like, God can redeem through the grace of God, but also the way he designed the brain to conform through oxytocin, through vasopressin, through the dopamine neurotransmitters, to enjoy the wife of their youth again. But to your point, this is where I think it's hard for men. And this is the part I need you to be super honest and vulnerable and all the things. Because it might be that he's needing to have sex with you so that he can overcome a porn addiction. It might be that he's having sex with you because he wants to have sex with you because you're his wife. How does a man who has had a porn addiction be vulnerable about that, lead through that, when it's so hurtful and so, what's the right word? You probably give a better description, traumatic even, to experience not being enough, I guess, or the feeling that it's about you and not about his issue doesn't take away from the marriage. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I think first he needs to fully invite her into the battle with him.
Yeah. How did Pablo do that with you?
A lot of long conversations about where his addiction stemmed from. A lot of reassurance on his part that it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Because it never does have anything to do with the spouse,
Right.
even though
It sure feels like it.
it feels like it.
Yep.
Yeah, the daily check-ins.
What are those daily check-ins?
He will, like, before we go to bed, he'll let me know how he did that day.
And how hard
And
is that
not-
for you now?
Oh, it's not hard for me at all.
Really? So you've
Yeah.
gotten to a point because you understand that it's not about you and it's his issue. So that when he says, yeah, there's this girl I saw at the gym or this ad popped up on my phone, and how do you handle that?
I pray over him.
And you pray over him,
Mhm.
you pray the gospel over him. And
Yeah, and then we assess if there was anything he could have done better. Like, a lot of times it's, oh, my quiet time was lacking, or I didn't pray before going into the grocery store. So just asking, like, okay, what can we do tomorrow so that this doesn't happen again?
wow.
So that there's also some form of accountability there. And then praying over one another, and then, I mean, you just choose to forgive. Like,
Okay, so I think
Y'all are awesome.
You guys are so amazing. I think when man or woman hearing this, they'd say, there is no way I could tell my wife because she would lose her ever living mind and guns would come out, like violence would ensue. Like, I think there's a real fear here
mhm.
that if I were to let her know of what's really going on in my soul, I would break her. Talk to me about that. And I don't know if you had that experience.
Yeah. This is actually something that just happened at Reengage this last time around. Because the goal of Reengage is for you to open up the 1% that you haven't shared with your spouse.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And we've done it like 3 times now. And I've just been like, man, what's my 1%? Like, I feel like we've talked about everything, you know? And then it hit me that there's like a certain type of porn that I would like to watch, and I was really ashamed of it. And I felt like if Bree knew that she would just look at me different, that she would think I'm disgusting.
Right.
And mostly because I thought those things of myself. And so I got convicted of it. And then I told her about it, and I told her I was like scared to say it. And she like convinced me, like, there's nothing that you could do that would make me look at you any differently. And then I finally shared it with her, and I was super scared. And she laughed because of like how much I thought this was going to affect us. And she was like, that's it. Like, so, even though it was like really scary, I think I don't know. It definitely brought us closer, and it made me feel a lot more secure in our marriage because, you know, something that I thought was like the worst thing about myself, she is just like, it's not that bad, you know? I don't know if you had something else in mind.
Well, I also want to make a point that we didn't go from, oh, I need to work through this porn addiction and invite my wife in, to having these conversations
Overnight.
right away. Like,
Yeah.
this was years of, like, first he had to have a conversation with me, like, how much do you, like, I struggle with this, I want to overcome it, I need your help. How much do you want to know? Because there's some women out there who,
They don't want to know.
they just want to know, did you watch porn or not? They
Right.
don't want to know what led you, what temptations you were overcoming, like, they don't want to know many details. So I think it's first important to know what your wife can and can't handle, because what I can handle now is not what I could handle back then.
So how did you grow in that? How did you know what you could handle and not handle?
I think it was just baby steps.
Okay.
Like, once I started to handle him just telling me when he slipped up and reacting better to that, then I could start to handle, okay, well, what little sins, not little sins, but little temptations
Right.
did you fall victim to throughout the day? Or I think it was a lot of personal growth within my own faith that got me there too. He wants the microphone. And then counseling helped as well.
Good.
But yeah. So then once you get to that point, whatever your wife is okay with, now you have to hold up your end of the deal
Of confessing it.
of confessing it.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. And I think you guys are just, I feel like more couples should feel confident coming to you guys to say, like, hey, walk us through this. And this is why community is so important. Like, the fact that you guys are so open about this struggle that you guys have overcome allows more people to go like, hey, I think I can overcome this and I need your help. So when does Reengage start?
August 9th.
All right, we've got a couple more months. It's fine. We'll just suffer until then. No, I think what you're saying is like, hey, you can still meet with people and walk them through a little bit of this before we formalize it. And there's tons of counseling available, and we'd love to help you out.
Yeah.
The other part that I want to talk about just briefly was when the husband and wife in Song of Solomon 4, he says before they have intercourse, he says, until the day breathes and the shadows flee, I will go away to the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense. You're all together. Beautiful, my love. There's no flaw in you. And what he was saying there is like, I'm content with your breasts and above until you're ready for me to have intercourse with you. I'm so in love with you. Waiting for me is no problem. I can make sure you're preheated fully until that moment comes. And I thought there was something very gentle about that. He does something where he makes the woman the standard of beauty. I think, Holland, you brought that up to me as we were talking about this week. The woman is the standard of beauty, not the comparison of the culture, which she probably might have to work in her own mind to wrap her head around, but to understand that she is perfect for him is a huge part of a woman's own mindset for sex to happen. Would you agree with that? Mm-hmm. Is there ever any other crazy thoughts going through your head? If I'm not enough, he's thinking about I'm too whatever. Is that ever a thing for you?
Yeah.
How do you get your brain to like calm down? Or I don't even know if that's the right word, but how do you get to focus?
I just tell him, hey, this is what I'm feeling.
Oh, wow.
And then he usually just reassures me.
That's beautiful. I think that assurance, and if men can initiate that assurance, that becomes a huge aspect. Way to go, Pablo. I think the other part here is the next verse when he says, come with me from Lebanon, my bride, come with me from Lebanon, depart from the peak of Amana, from the peak of Sinir and Hermon. He's saying, I need you to leave the past great things behind. He's talking about where she was from, her hometown, where they could see the mountains. But then also says, from the dens of lions, from the mountains of leopards, also for the dangers. Like, focus on me in this moment and don't have all the other ADHD moments of your brain going pew, 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 firing off because you need to focus on who's in front of you. And then on top of that, marriage-wise, it's so important to leave and to cleave. Have you two had any issues leaving and cleaving? Like, is there still a part of you, Bree, that was ever stuck with your family, or you're like, we're out?
I don't think now.
Yeah, we went through this.
But we went through it.
Yeah. What was the issue?
Yeah,
What I love about podcasts that are live, you just never know when you're going to step on a landmine. So go ahead, Pablo.
Yeah. You know this. You walked through this with us.
That's true.
Basically, here's the deal. So we were, I'll try to make it short, but it's a long story. We were living together, boyfriend and girlfriend, and the more serious we got in our faith, we started getting convicted of that. And so we were like, okay, we need to get married. Like we always wanted to get married. And so one weekend, Bree's out of town. I go to her parents and I ask for her hand in marriage. And they basically said, not yet. And they had certain things that they wanted me to improve on, which I didn't agree with any of them at the time. But I was like, hey, I respected them enough to come and ask for her hand. So I'm going to be respectful enough and just try to work on these things and make sure that we get their blessing. So anyways, I start working on these things. 8 months go by and I'm like, okay, like I feel like I improved on all of them and they haven't said anything. So I go to them again and I'm like, hey, here's the things you mentioned. Here's how I've improved. I just want to know if there's like any updates. And they weren't like very happy about that. Oh gosh. But they finally like said yes. So I was like, cool. So as for Bree, for her hand in marriage, we get engaged, and the plan was we were going to have our actual wedding like a year later. So we were going to be engaged for a year because this is what her parents thought was best.
No, that's when we venue, and we already put the down payment for the venue.
Okay. Well, there's that. This is why you need a wife, because she's,
Has a better memory.
Yeah. Anyways, so some time go by and, still feeling convicted because we're still not married, living together in sexual sin. And so we start praying about, do I move out and we live separate until our wedding, or do we just get eloped? And so we pray about it. and then get to a point where I'm like, okay, I think I should probably move out. And so I move out. I lived with 2 different people for probably a total of like 6 months. And then the living situation fell through, and I had to come back home. So we're living together again, still convicted. And I'm like, man, what do we do? And so I'm praying about it. And very clearly, I felt God telling us, like, this is the time to get married. Like, you need to get eloped. And this was still probably like 6 months out from the wedding. I don't know. It was a long time out from the wedding. And I knew Bree wasn't going to be happy about it because she wanted to make sure we had her parents' blessing and approval. But I was like, this is what God's telling me to do, and this is what we're going to do. And so go and have that conversation with her parents. And they were very happy. Well, sorry, before the conversation, this is where what you asked applies, because the reason Bree didn't want to get eloped yet was because of the approval from her mom and her dad,
Right.
which was understandable up to the point where what they're asking of us was interfering with what God was asking of us. And I remember I had this conversation with you and I think with Robert, where I was like, well, technically in the eyes of Texas, we're married because under what's the law called?
Common
Law marriage. So I was like, we're married. And you're like, yeah, no, you're not.
No.
So, and
Glad
whatever.
I said that 'cause I was like, what did I say?
Yeah. And then you literally sent me on like a prayer walk where I walked like 5 miles praying.
That's good.
And then you're like, and then tell me what God says when you come back. And I was like, crap. So, so that was the case. And that's when you helped me realize, though, is the reason why, well, one, the reason why we don't want to go and get married is there's something stopping it. It's not just, we want to please her parents, whatever. And that's when we realized that Bree still wasn't fully, she didn't leave and cleave onto me yet, because she was so worried about what her parents' opinion was on this whole situation that she was allowing that to affect her coming under my authority. Like, she was basically still under her dad's authority and not under mine. Obviously, because we hadn't been married yet. But
Right.
the point is,
so far, so
she
good.
wasn't like making the transition.
Yeah.
And so once we talked about that and realized that, then she was like, okay, like, God is calling us to do this. And even if my parents don't agree, it's more important that we're obedient to God than to what they want. Because it was truly based out of an opinion. It wasn't anything biblical. It was just like, we don't want you to have a shotgun wedding. And we were like, okay. So we go and have the conversation with them. It did not go well at all. Her mom was a little more understanding. Her dad wasn't understanding at all. He like flipped out. But I basically told him like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Like, I'm trying to be obedient to God. I don't want to live in sin. And this is what we're going to do. And so at the end of it, kind of worked out for everyone, because there's this thing where it's not an actual marriage certificate, but but I thought it was like a certificate.
Are you guys married?
It was a certificate for common law marriage, but I remember this. It was different from like an actual marriage certificate, because your parents accepted that. And they were like, sure, if that's what you want to do and that works for you, that's fine. But in their eyes, we still weren't married.
Even though we would file taxes as we were married, we had documentation. Like, the government said we were married.
So we are married.
So you got married.
Then we had
Plek signed it.
wedding too.
No, I don't think. I signed the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
He signed it.
What a confusing time.
Yeah.
So many things. So
Wait,
many.
did y'all have like another ceremony or something after
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Chris did it?
I did it.
Did
I
you
did the
pronounce
actual.
them husband and wife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are married.
Yeah. We did an actual ceremony.
That's great.
I don't
Congratulations,
remember
you guys.
what happened in that interim. That is one big
It was
blur.
very confusing. And if you're confused, you can imagine how I felt. I was just trying to do the right thing. And it was a lot more complicated than that.
So how are things like now?
Yeah.
With your parents?
Oh, they're great. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
a rough start.
Yeah. No,
Praise
you
the
know
Lord.
what? I think her dad respected me a lot more because I stood for what I believed in. And I think he wasn't expecting that. he was expecting me to just be like, okay, like we'll just do what you want. So at first it was like kind of awkward and, you know, just weird. But like after, we grew so much closer. Like we're way closer today. And I think it has a lot to do
You
with
and
that whole
her dad?
situation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
So did you? I guess the real question I had was, did you ever have any issues of her when you were married, leaving and cleaving? Like, was there a part of it that was difficult for her to leave traditions of her house to start a new family with you? Was that ever a difficult thing? Why?
You're talking to
Yeah, you got to talk into the microphone because we're on a podcast. They can't see
I'm
you.
very set in my family's traditions on holidays and like wanting to be with my parents and my siblings on holidays.
Oh wow, how does that go over with you, Pablo?
Now it's better. I think I was bitter at first because I don't have family here. So I was tired of seeing her family all the time.
Oh gosh.
I'm just being honest.
Call it like it is. That's good. All right.
Yeah.
This is live marriage counseling, everyone. All right. So, you guys.
I'm just telling the truth.
So, how did you guys move through that?
We now alternate holidays.
Oh, good. Good for you. That's very. Do you like? Where? Because is your family in California?
They're in Florida.
Florida. Okay.
Yeah. Some in California.
Okay. Wow. That is awesome. You guys have done a good job at figuring out your traditions over time. All right. I want to get to this last one that you brought up a question earlier that you had.
When you were are they neural pathways? Is that what they're
Neural
called?
pathways. Yeah.
Yeah. When you were talking about rewiring the brain.
Yeah. What fires together wires together.
Yeah. You dropped in you're able to rewire your brain for your wife and not a porn addiction. But then you also dropped in, if you have homosexual tendencies, you can rewire that too.
Mm-hmm.
My question is how?
Yeah, it's the same.
For both, how?
So there's a lot. Here's what you may not know. Being a pastor, you counsel a lot of guys that are having sex with men while they're married to their wife. And so that's a thing. And so you can, if you, or can look at, look at gay porn or whatever, and you can rewire your brain to be attracted to your wife. So that was it was in my head as I was preaching that. And now as I'm putting together what you probably heard was like, you just need to go have sex with women and then go to the strip club and you'll be cured. And that's not what I was advocating. I do appreciate that viewpoint. Don't go to the strip club, Holland.
Got it.
But I do have Jordan Smith here. So Jordan struggles with same-sex attraction, and when you hear that, does it feel like hopeless to you, or give me your thoughts on that?
Rewiring the brain?
Yeah.
Not hopeless. I mean, I think you have your opinion. Do I believe that same opinion? I don't know. I have been thinking through recently of, if you trust God and God can do anything, then is it true faith to just pursue a woman even if you have no attraction? It's kind of what I'm working through right now.
Yeah, and
Is that scientific?
Amen.
yeah, about how your brain it's not solely on environment matters, what you believe matters. There's everything. There's it's a holistic approach because you're not just pure matter. You're also spirit. You're also emotion. You're also a lot of that stuff. But God helps you out in developing the neural pathways so that you are attracted to your spouse for monogamy. That's that purpose. So yes, and it's like a part of the picture, not the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
Theologically, we understand that your desires are malleable.
Yep.
What you think is right or good or beautiful and attractive can change.
Yep.
And changes over time in a lot of ways, but especially from going from an unbeliever to a believer. And you have passages like Romans 12, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like our minds can be renewed, our desires, our hearts, what we find attractive can be transformed by God and can be transformed even naturally, biologically, through like the stuff that you're talking about. When you say rewire the brain, you're essentially saying through natural, not supernatural means of
Right.
God giving you new desires.
Right.
You're saying through natural means, what we like and desire can be changed
Right.
based on, the certain things
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
do.
yeah.
So, but then the question of, I don't know. I want to hear everyone's thoughts on this. 'Cause
Yeah, yeah, 'cause
I have my thoughts on, should you just marry someone that you're not attracted to? Like, that's what you're saying, right? Should I just have faith, find a godly woman, marry her, even if I'm not sexually or physically attracted to her, right?
Right, and I believe that's what you're implying as well,
Yeah.
right?
So I think, like, number one, sexual attraction is not a prerequisite for marriage.
Right.
I think everyone kind of assumes that it is. Like,
Especially in our modern culture, right? But back in the day of arranged marriages, you may not,
yeah,
you get what you get.
It's
for a
not a
fit.
condition for marriage. It's not like also, I think if you just look at, there's a lot of marriages where a lot of women are not attracted to their husbands.
Right.
And that's a normal thing. And
Yep.
so, but what you read in Song of Solomon is like, you see like that verse, there's no flaw in you.
Mm.
You see someone who is focusing on recognizing the beauty of the other person.
Mm.
And so you don't have to, like, I can even, like, I do not struggle with same-sex attraction, but I can look and be like, you're a good-looking dude. And I can recognize, man, you got a nice beard going on there, Chris, and, you got,
Don't lie in the church, bro. Come on.
and you're like a strong dude, you're healthy. Like, you can recognize
Right.
athleticism or fitness or
Right.
handsomeness or beauty or
Yeah.
whatever in a man and a woman. We do this, like, even, your
Because you do it with like
your
cars
mom,
or houses
or your mom. Like, mom, you look beautiful.
moms. There
Your
you go.
daughter,
Thanks.
you look beautiful
There
in
you
your
go.
prom dress or whatever.
Right.
Your brother, you look handsome. You can recognize those things without being necessarily like attracted to a
Right.
person.
Sexually attracted, right?
Yeah. And so within the context of like a marriage, you could still, like, if you don't have a sexual attraction to someone, you can still recognize their beauty and speak those things and call them out to encourage the person. You can be what you're really called to be attracted to in a person, according to Scripture, is godliness. Beauty is fleeting, charm is
Deceptive.
deceitful, right? But a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised.
Yeah.
The fear of the Lord, godliness, 1 Peter, a gentle, quiet spirit, which
Yep.
is very precious in the sight of God. It's godliness that is meant to be what we're attracted to.
Right.
More than anything else. And if you make physical attraction essential to marriage, you really ruin, I think, the core of what marriage is, which is covenant commitment.
Were you attracted to your wife?
Yeah, so yes, and I think my wife's beautiful, but what was most attractive to me about her was her heart for God.
Yeah.
Because here's the deal: if I make her physical beauty that's the most important thing. She gets in a car accident and the side of her face gets burned off, she loses an arm, something like that, and she just doesn't look the same. If that's what our marriage is based off, well, that's gone now.
Gone.
But if our marriage is based off, I'm attracted to your heart for God, and I'm committed to you in a covenant commitment that no matter, car wreck or sickness and health, for richer or poorer, then, like that's what marriage is really about, is that covenantal love and commitment.
Right.
And an attraction based on a fear of the Lord. So that's that's where I would support you in saying, hey, if there's a godly woman at this church, you're like, man, she's following Jesus, and there's no sexual attraction, I would say, praise the Lord. You're not lusting. That's a
Right.
good thing.
Win.
And I think if you were to, go on a date with her and, you both love the Lord and you were to get married or something, you take those steps. I think the Lord, what Chris is talking about, could rewire, even through natural means, but
Yep.
also supernatural.
Supernatural,
God, give
yeah.
me a desire. But I think the Lord can work through that, and that it's right and good, and that is that God created male and female for each other.
Right.
And he blesses that.
Right.
So I think I would be supportive of that. And I think a godly woman who feared the Lord would
Also
be supportive of that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't lie to her, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I would be like, here's where I'm at. And the thing that's really great about you, Jordan, is that, I mean, here we are on live podcast, streaming to millions and millions of twos out there. where people can hear, see, and go, oh, there's a real guy who loves Jesus, who's struggling with real sinful desire, but wants to overcome by the power of the blood and testimony, all that. And I'm willing to get to know him. And if that, and you're a deep friend, you're a kind of go all the way friend. So you're not like a surface level person. You love the deeper things. You think about things, and so a woman would be really attracted to that. And you could probably be like, "Hey, let me get up Song of Solomon chapter 4. Your hair is like a flock of goats running down Gilead." I mean, like you could probably say that and mean it, and it'd be really sweet and beautiful. And I think that that's the part where I challenge you and our listeners out there. Like, if you're struggling in a sinful desire, then obviously you want to orient your heart towards Jesus, and the best thing you can do is become a friend of a woman, and then that's single, and then let's see where God takes it. I would not be against that either. So I'm encouraged. I totally agree with Holland, and I think I've said that to you before, but I'm excited for that. Let's just see what happens. I would love to see what the Lord does with you as you start to take a step of faith, although it's challenging. And we've all known people that had homosexual background tendencies, and then they did get married and they flourished. And I think there are couples at this church that have that experienced just that and are living for the Lord now, even though they've had a history of gay pornography in their past. And so that's something I can kind of look at and go, like, I've seen the proof in couples at our church, and now walking them into freedom with Jesus is pretty great.
It's exciting.
I'm kind of Bree. What do you think
Yeah.
about, like, let's say Pablo, you know, you guys were dating, and maybe like a different, you know, it would be a different story than y'all's story. But say
you
you're
guys
just
have
you're
a wacky
dating,
story
and
as it is.
he's just like, hey, I'm not like, here's what I've struggled with in the past, and I'm not like physically attracted to you, but I do think you're like a beautiful person. You know, I love your heart for God. You know, and I would love to be in a relationship with you, but that aspect wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But you knew he was gonna like love you and serve you and protect you and provide for you and be a spiritual leader. Like, what do you think about that? How would you receive that? Or
Personally, I would be like, this isn't gonna work out.
Yeah,
But
fair.
that's me. Like, that to me, I struggle with physical appearance, so I need someone who will reassure me that they are attracted to me. That's something I look for in my spouse. I do know there are women out there who that's not a priority to them. There's actually a couple in this church. I won't say their names because I don't know how public they want it, but their testimony is one of my favorites, where he straight up told her, I'm interested in pursuing you. I'm not attracted to you. And she was like, that's fine. And the attraction came later on.
Yep.
And that's awesome. But it does take a very special woman
Yep.
who's very confident in herself already to be willing to do that.
And
that's kind of who you want too,
And that
right?
couple's super happily married now, which is really great.
Yeah.
And that's a great, that story in of itself, that has a woman of self-confidence like through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
But which just shows that she was raised by loving parents who told her she was more, you know, like, hey, it's not about what other people think. You're awesome and loved and blah. I mean, that's a lot of love that you've received. So then, like, endure that, and then, like, I think she felt called by God to marry him. And
Yeah.
as odd as that sounds, which ultimately we knew it was true when they said I do. But I do feel like that's a great picture of that, of like he now finds her very attractive, and it's a wild thing.
When we so we used to do apartment life, and at our apartment there was a bunch of Indian couples who all Hindu Indian couples. Most were arranged marriages. And my wife was asking one of them one time, just like they were getting to know each other a little bit, and she was like, "Arranged marriage, like, what are your thoughts? Like, what was that like?" And she was like, "Well, I did not used to like him or be attracted to him, and now I am, and he's my baby now." And that was her response. And it was just like, and they were like a sweet couple, and they had a baby together, and she was just very upfront and direct about it. I did not like him. I was not attracted to him, and he's my baby now.
Yeah, I think
That's the thing
I
that you're
love
talking
that.
about with
That's
oxytocin
That's
and
exactly right. I mean, like, it couldn't be more clear from that example. And I think in our culture that has created for us the romantic, we fell in love at first sight, I don't want to call it complete garbage, but there is like just we've overemphasized a beauty that is so subjective and changes over time. And if your brain is designed to fall in love with that which you have sex with, then what comes first? I think the problem for a lot of us is we're having a lot of sex before we have a lot of commitment. And so therefore, in a transactional relationship, you better have the body, because I will find another one who does. In a covenantal relationship is you're with me no matter what. And that, to what I'm talking about with you, Jordan, is the covenantal relationship that we're talking about is so much greater than a physical attraction. It's covenantal. It's building a fabric of society, building family together, representing Jesus in the church. And like in some ways you have an advantage because you're not skewed by the world and you have to look a certain look for me to be into you, but rather I'm going to trust God and love you as Christ loved the church, because that's what I'm called to do. And that takes the pressure off, I think, probably for the woman in many ways, to have to live up to some sort of beauty standard. Anyway, just my thought on that.
Cool.
There you go.
There you go. All right. Any other thoughts on that? We spent a lot of time on this particular podcast.
I don't think so.
Yeah. All right. Hey, listen, we love talking faith, culture, everything in between. And very excited about Song of Solomon chapter 4, and very excited about Song of Solomon chapter 5, which Pastor Mo will be bringing this weekend. So very excited for him to talk about what happens when the relationship gets a little rocky. That's where we're going.